Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. So in today's video I'm going to show us how to cut and sew four different styles of cargo pockets, and this tutorial is going to be very detailed and beginners friendly, and let's get started with this tutorial for today. So the measurement of the pocket I'm going to be working with is a width of 6 inches and a length of 7 inches. So I'm having a width of 6 inches and a depth of 7 inches. So this is what I'm using for this tutorial. Your pocket can be bigger than this and your pocket can be smaller than this measurement. So please take note. So I have a width of 6 inches, which is going to be the upper part of my pocket, and a depth of 7 inches. So I'm going to cut out this pocket, and this is what we're having. Now to cut out our pocket cover, I'm going to be working with a width of 6 inches also. So the width of our pocket cover must be the same with the width of our pocket, and I'm going to work with a depth of 2.5 inches for the pocket cover. So I came down with 2.5 inches for the depth. So width of 6 inches and depth of 2.5 inches. Then I'll cut out. So this is what we are having for our pocket. This is what we're going to be working with. So this is the fabric I'll be using to cut out our pockets. The first thing I'm going to do is to place my pocket pattern on this fabric. I'm going to pin the pattern on the fabric, after which I'll be adding my seam allowance, and on the upper part I'm going to be adding a seam allowance of 1 inch so that we can fold that part, while the other 3 sides I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance. So this is our first style of our cargo pocket. So 1/2 inch on the 3 sides, and on the upper part 1 inch. Then I'll be cutting out a cover for this pocket, and I'll fold my fabric into 2 and place my pattern on it. I'll pin my pattern in place, after which I'll be adding my seam allowance of 1/2 inch all round, 1/2 inch on the 4 sides of this pattern. So, and I said our fabric for this pocket cover is on fold, so I'm having 2 pieces of it, while the pocket is just 1 piece. So I'm going to be notching this part of our pocket to indicate that it is the upper part, so we don't mix it up. So any part you see that is notched, we know that that's the upper part of this pocket. I'll take out my pins and take out my pattern, and I'm going to be measuring around the 3 sides of this pocket like so. I'll measure around the edge, and I'm having 24 inches. So with this 24 inches now, I've gone ahead to cut out our pocket border of 24 inches and a depth of 2 inches. So this 2 inches, you can make it 2.5, you can make it 2, you can make it 1.5, depending on the size of pocket. So now I'm going to be rolling the upper part of this pocket with 1 inch. I'll fold it with 1/2 inch first, then fold with another 1/2 inch, and so this is the 1 inch allowance we added at the top. Then on the pocket cover, I will sew the 3 sides with 1/2 inch. And this is what I'm having after doing that. I'm just going to trim off the excess allowance on the pocket cover, so when we turn it, it lays very well. I'll turn it to the right side, then I'll iron it out and sew for flat the pockets on the 3 sides. I'll sew another line on the 3 sides. Then on the pocket border now, I'm going to fold the edge of this pocket border like so, just like the way we did for the top of the pocket. Then I'll place the right side of this pocket border on the right side of the pocket and sew with 1/2 inch like so. I'll sew with 1/2 inch, and if the border is excess, so I'm going to trim off the excess and roll that side so it aligns with the pocket. just like we have at the beginning of it. So this is what I'm having after doing that. So this is the first style of our pocket, and this is how I flatted the pocket cover, so it gives that cargo effect. Next, I'm going to be flattening this edge. I'll fold in the border, I'll hold it in place, then sew at the very tip of the pocket and at the pocket border. I'll fold the two in there and sew at the tip. So look at what I'm having. This is what I did. You can see how it is. So we needed to have all those cargo pocket effect. So I'm going to be sewing this pocket now to my fabric. I'm going to fold in the borders, making sure everything is inside. Then I'll use my chalk to trace out the shape of this pocket. So the border is inside. You can see the border is not out. I'm tracing only the pocket, and this is the mark I'm having. Then I'm going to fold the border in with 1/2 inch and place it exactly on that line I chalked and sew at the tip. I'll fold the border in with 1/2 inch, place it on that line and sew on the tip. So this is it. This is what I'm having. So I don't want the pocket to be opening at that point too much. I'm going to fold it this way and just stop stitch at the beginning there, so that it controls the opening of the pocket. This is it. Now to place our cover, I'll be marking 1/2 inch away from the top of the pocket, 1/2 inch away. Then I'll place the tip of my pocket cover on that 1/2 inch and sew 1/2 inch on top of the pocket cover. After doing that, I went ahead to flat the pocket. As you can see, the flattening helps the pocket cover to relax. Now for the second style of our pocket, I'm going to pin our pattern again on our fabric. And the second style is going to be having a pleat on the center of the pocket. So just like we did for the first one, I'll be adding a seam allowance of 1 inch at the top. Then on the side, the pleat is going to be 1.5 inches wide. That is, we'll be timesing that by 2, that's 3 inches. So we're going to mark out 3 inches plus 1/2 inch sewing allowance, that's 3.5 inches. So I'll be marking 3.5 inches on the side, and on the lower part I'll be marking 1/2 inch, and on this other side I'll be adding just 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut out. So the 3 inches we added on this side is going to come to the middle to form our pleats. So I'm going to cut out all we have here. Then I'm going to notch the upper part, so we know that is the up of our pocket. So I'm going to fold this fabric now into 2, and I'm folding it the right side. I'm folding it on the right side. I'm going to pin it. So this is the right side of our fabric after folding into 2. So I'll pin it so it stays in place. Then from the center, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches. I'll mark 1.5 inches. And this is the right side of our pocket, not the wrong side, the right side. So this 1.5 inches now, I'm going to sew it all the way to the end. After sewing it, this is what I'm having. So you can see our pleats. I'm going to notch the center of this, the center front here, and I'll open it and make sure that the center, the part we notched, is on top of the sewing line we have there. So this is just to make sure that the pleat stays in the middle of the pocket and doesn't tilt to one side. After which I'll turn this now to the wrong side and fold the upper part with 1 inch. I'll fold it with 1/2 inch first, then fold it with 1/2 inch again. Then the other 3 sides, I'm going to fold in with 1/2 inch and iron it out. So we iron out the allowance, and this is what I'm having. I've sewn the up with 1 inch and I've ironed the seam allowance on the other 3 sides. I've also ironed the pleats on the center front of our pocket, and this is it. Now I'm going to sew this on my fabric. I'm going to trace out, I'll fold in the allowance and trace out the sides of this pocket. So instead of tracing out, you can also pin it in place, then sew it. You can pin it in place then sew it, or just chalk where this pocket is going to be. Then I'm going to sew at the tip, and I'll also be sewing another line, as you can see, to give that cargo effect. So for the third style of pocket, cargo pocket, I'm going to pin my pattern on my fabric again. Then just like we did for the second style, I'll be adding 1 inch to the upper part of this pocket and 3.5 inches to one side. Then on the lower part, I'll be adding 1/2 inch, and the other side I'll be adding 1/2 inch. Then I'll notch the upper part. So I'll take out my pattern now and mark the upper part. So for this side now, this is the back of my fabric. I'm going to be folding my fabric on the wrong side. So this is the wrong side of our fabric facing up. The other one we folded on the right side, but for this third style, this is the wrong side of our fabric. And from the center front, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches all the way. I'll mark 1.5 inches. I'll draw a straight line. So we're not going to be sewing all through this line. What I'll do first is to come down with the 1 inch for our folding allowance, then come down with another 1 inch. So I'm going to be sewing for 2 inches straight and stop there. Then on the lower part, I'm going to go up with 1/2 inch, which is our sewing allowance, and another 1/2 inch. So I'm going to be sewing 1 inch at this bottom. So I'll sew 2 inches at the top and skip till I sew 1 inch at the bottom. And this is what I'm having. I'll go ahead and iron this pleat like so, and this is how the front of our pocket is going to be. We're going to be having an inner pleat pocket here. So this is it. Then I'm going to fold the upper parts. I'll fold 1/2 inch, then fold another 1/2 inch and sew at the tip. Then for all the 3 sides, I'll fold in this allowance of 1/2 inch and iron it. So this is how our pocket is after ironing. I'll place this on my fabric now. And like the second one, I'm going to chalk out the borders of the border of this pocket. You can use your chalk to chalk it out, or you can pin it in place. Then I'm going to sew on the tip. First of all, I'll firstly sew on the tip, then sew a second line around the pocket, just like the second style. So this is what I'm having so far. So I want to cut out a different style of pocket cover. I'll fold my fabric into 2 and place my pattern on it. And for this style, on the lower part, I'm going to be adding a seam allowance of 1 inch. 1 inch on the lower part, while the other 3 sides, I'll be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance. So this is it. I'll take out my pattern now. Then fold this fabric into 2 again. And on the side that is cut open, I will go up with 1 inch. Then connect that 1 inch to the center point there. So we can have like a V-shaped pocket cover. I'm going to cut out. And you can see what we are having. Now I'm going to sew with 1/2 inch, leaving only the top part open. This is what I'm having. I'll trim out the excess allowance, then turn this to the right side. So after turning it to the right side, I'm going to iron it out, then sew. For flat it, I'll sew on the 3 sides. So this is what I'm having after doing that. Now I'm going to sew this to my fabric. I'm going to mark 1/2 inch away from the tip of my pocket, Then place the pocket cover on that half inch and sew half inch on the pocket cover and for flat after that. So this is it, guys. So for the fourth pocket, I'm going to come down from the top of my pattern here with 2 inches. I'll mark 2 inches. Then I'm going to cut out. I'll just label this, the up part, the down. Then I'm going to cut out from this 2 inches point. Can be 2 inches, can be 1.5 or 2 inches for today's tutorial. And I'm going to be placing this on my fabric here. I'll pin the pattern on the fabric. And this pattern here, like I said earlier, the width of this pattern is 6 inches. But I want this particular pocket width to be 7 inches. So it means I'm going to be adding 1 inch on both sides of this pocket. So the 6 inches plus 1 inch on both sides, that's 8 inches plus the sewing allowance. Then on the lower part, I'll be adding half inch, and on the upper part also, I'll be adding half inch. I'll pin this part too. I'll pin it, then I'm going to be adding half inch at the lower part and half inch on the upper part, and on the sides I'll be adding 1 inch on both sides, just like we did for the lower part. So these 2 pieces I'm having here is still the pocket. It's because we're going to be having a zipper on the side, on the front of this pocket. That is why I divided it. So this is what I'm having. I'm just going to notch these 2 parts I cut through. I'll notch it, the upper part of this and the lower part of this, so that we know that these 2 sides are supposed to be sewn together. So you can see what I'm having. I'm having 8 inches. By the time I sew half inch on both sides, my pocket is now 7 inches, just like I wanted it to be. So now I'll close up these 2 sides. I'll place it like so, right sides facing each other. Then I'm going to sew with half inch, which is the seam allowance I added for my zipper. I'll sew 1 inch with normal stitches. I'll sew 1 inch, then top stitch and sew with loose stitches, and towards the end I'll mark 1 inch again and sew with normal stitches. So normal stitches, top stitch, loose stitches, top stitch, normal stitches. So we're using loose stitches at that point because we're still going to loosen it to fix our zip. So I've ironed our seam allowance now, and I'll be loosening the loose stitches we used here so we can fix our zipper to this pant, to this pocket. So that's why I said loose stitches, because we're still going to be loosening the thread. So this is what I have after doing that. And this is the zipper I'm going to be using for this pocket. So we want the outcome of our zipper to be this way on the pocket. So what I'll do now, I'll turn this pocket to the wrong side and place the zipper, making sure the right side of the zipper faces down. Then I'm going to pick up the allowance of the zipper on the upper part and the allowance of the fabric on the upper part and sew with half inch. Then on this lower part, I'll move in the zipper head, then pick the allowance of the zipper and the zipper allowance on this lower side. And as I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I left half inch seam allowance on this side, which we'll be using to sew our pockets. So the zipper should not get to half inch on both sides, because that is our sewing allowance. So after sewing the lower part, this is what I'm having, and by the time I open my pockets, you can see what we are having. So I'll just cut out the excess part of the zipper, and I said on the 2 sides we make sure our half inch seam allowance, we do not sew the zip on it. So I'm going to be top stitching on this point so that our zipper head does not run out, and I'll show us what I'm having after doing that. And before then, I'm going to measure the four sides of this pocket. For the previous ones I measured just three sides, but for this I'll measure the four sides. And I've gone ahead to four flat my zipper. You can see what I did. So with this now, the zipper is not going to wear out at any point. This is my pocket border, and the width is 2.5 inches. For the first border I used 2 inches, but for this I'm using 2.5. I'll place it right side facing each other, then sew with 1/2 inch. I'll sew it with 1/2 inch on the four sides. Then on this side, I'm going to close up with 1/2 inch, then trim off the excess allowance there. So this is what I'm having for my pocket. You can see. I'll turn it over to the right side and you can see how beautiful this pocket is coming out. Next, I'm going to be for flattening the tip. I'll fold in the border and sew at the tip of this, and this is what we are having. So I'll sew this to my fabric now, and I'll fold in all the border, then trace out my pockets. So you can use your chalk for this, but you need to trace this out. You don't need pins for this. I'll use my chalk to trace out the pattern of the pockets. So after doing that now, I'll be folding my border in with 1/2 inch and place it on that markings I've made on my fabric and sew at the tip. I'll sew at the tip of my border, and I'll do that for all the four sides. So after doing that now, this is what we are having. You can see our pocket came out so well. So guys, this is all our 4 pockets that we've made for today's tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching guys, and see you in my next video. Bye for now.